join me to bring on stage someone who is very, very eager to share with us something that's going to open our mind, if I may say, blow our mind, as he touches upon the neuroscience and aspects of that related to leadership. Please join me to bring on stage Mr. Biju Dominic to talk about rationalizing the irrational. He has 33 years of experience. Biju has been trying to unravel the complexities of human behavior. Today at Fractal Analytics, he is combining learning from the fields of artificial intelligence and neuroscience to develop unique solutions to human behavior problems. Thank you so much for being here, sir. I think it's going to be a mind-blowing session. Over to you.
Hi, everyone, and good morning. I begin, and I know I'm standing in front of some of the brightest financial minds in this country, and I put up a slide that begins saying that, investment is a complex decision. That is the understatement. Because of the year. Because I know each of you would say, yeah, Biju, of course. We know that that investment is not just a complex decision, it's a bloody complex decision. And if I have to actually talk also about a facet of not just investments, but the relationship that I have with the people who are investing through me in my company, and try to sort of understand that relationship, the complexity then goes on to gigantic levels. There's no doubt about it. You and I have experienced it, and you are living it every day. Many times you said, can we make some sense out of it? Can we do something about it? Because I did hear some of the industry veterans just speak before me, and they said, yeah, we need to be close to the consumer. We need to be close to the investor, or it needs to be investor-centric, consumer-centric is what our business should be. The next few minutes, what I'm going to speak about is, consumer centricity, but going fairly deep into it. But I can assure you, towards the end of that, because what I'm taking in are some of the new understanding of human behavior that has come about in the last 15, 20 years. It will question a whole lot of practices that industries have been following, including the investment industry. So for the next 1 hour or next few minutes, let's just hold on to some of the things that I will speak about. Try to take it in before rejecting it. But let me begin the whole conversation with a simple question. Who invented telescope? Who invented telescope? Yeah, of course. Even before I asked the question, you knew the answer. Galileo invented telescope. But the truth is, Galileo did not invent telescope. Telescope was invented by a Dutch spectacle maker, Hans Lippershey, in 1608. Galileo heard of it because once it was invented, it was the talk of town across Europe. In all the fairs in Europe, people stood in lines for hours to look through that particular new instrument that was developed. All that Galileo did was ask this person, Lippershey, hey, what is this all about? And he said, can you make one for me? And 1610, Lippershey made one for Galileo. And all that Galileo did was, Galileo just changed the angle, the direction in which people were so far using the telescope. Obviously, he saw a whole lot of new things when he looked at it in a different angle. And so along with all those discoveries that were up there, the discovery of telescope also we have sort of attributed to Galileo. My session, I will be trying to request you to look at your business of investment and your relationship with your investors, possibly in a new angle. And that angle, I will be trying to look through the lens of the human brain. And as I said, in the last 15, 20 years, there has been some dramatically new information that has flown in the world of neuroscience, mostly cognitive neuroscience and computational neuroscience. And I think we tend to look at it from that angle. But I know, immediately you would say, come on, Biju, human behavior, neuroscience, that's not the happening thing these days. Happening thing these days is AI, data analytics. I mean, you Fractal analytics guys, pioneered data analytics way back. And now, obviously, AI, and we lead the world in that. Now, let's talk about that. That's cool. Technology, AI, that's what you should be speaking about. Now, more so because I think just this week, just 2016, that means from March 9 to March 15, 2016, there was a competition between the world of artificial intelligence, the machine, and the human. And that was AlphaGo's, when DeepMind's AlphaGo actually played a match of Go, which is a far more complex game than chess, with Lee Sedol. It was a 5-match, game. And that's when the world said, okay, let's decide now who is more powerful, the machine or the human. First game, Lee Sedol lost. Second game, on the 37th move, AlphaGo made a move. And all the people who were sort of commentating on the match said, oops, what a stupid move. Because even a person who just started playing, just knowing just the basics of Go game, know that this is not a move you should ever make. Because once you make this move, you are bound to lose. There's no doubt about it. But the second game, AlphaGo won. And then the experts played back and said, okay, why did this machine make that move? Now, the 37th move of the second game of AlphaGo Lee Sedol match is regarded as one of the big turning points in the history of artificial intelligence. Because until then, artificial intelligence or machines were seen as sort of imitating what the humans do. That imitation, we put it in the algorithms, and then, the machine just follow that. But this move said that, and I think, for example, this book, I'm sure you read, The World Without Work, very famous book. But that book, he said, now, that means these are moves humans were never thought of. And with that move, he said the machines are no longer riding on the coattails of human intelligence. And that was sort of a victory by the machine. And much has been spoken about it. But on the fourth game, on the 78th move, Lee Sedol made a move. And at that time, AlphaGo had a probability of winning of 70%. But the 78th move by Lee Sedol, people said, what is this move? And the machine just couldn't recover from it. And the fourth game, AlphaGo lost. Obviously, the fifth game also AlphaGo won. That's a no. So it was 4-1. But I just want to focus here on the 78th move. A move which a machine couldn't decipher at all. A move that was human mind, human brain at its most creative best. But I have a small little problem about it. I read a lot about the 37th move on the second game. I read a lot about what machines can do. But somewhere, I see what I call an intellectual dishonesty, where somewhere when it comes to talking about the machines and the power of the technology, But somewhere when there was a 78th move that actually spoke about the power of the human brain, the human mind, we somewhere don't speak about it. A sort of intellectual dishonesty. But this is not the first time this has happened. All of you have read this book. Many of you have quoted this particular book by Adam Smith. Wonderful. And the whole construct of classical economics, the rational man, and the whole thinking that we talk about it actually has come from this book. But 11 years before he wrote that book, Adam Smith wrote another book. And he considered this book to be a better book, or the best book that he has written. Today, when I take classes in management institutes and others, I ask even economic honor students, do you know about this book? And people says, no, I don't know. I mean, somewhere, when we created the rational man, and when we created the neoclassical classical economics and the mathematical models and the world of numbers and the world of graphs and computers, this somehow didn't fit into that. Emotions, empathy, people, let's discard it. And we created a whole economic world based on mathematical models and computer sciences around there. I think today I want to call out this intellectual dishonesty that has been on. Somewhere we're giving a secondary status to the power of the human brain. And somewhere we believe technology, mathematical models and numbers, of course they should be there. I'm not denying about it. But somewhere along with it, there is a power of something that is between our ears. And we need to take that into consideration. So alongside the machine, I think there are certain things the brain can do. But if you just look at that brain, Lisa Dolmatch itself tells you that. Today I've written, and some of you have read my column in Mint knows that. Several times I've written about it saying that yes, AI is brilliant. But in that match itself, let's take, what was the power consumption of AlphaGo? Was 200,000 watts. What is the power consumption of Lee Sedol's brain? 13 watts. 13 watts. Now when we're talking about carbon footprint of AI and the carbon footprint of human brain, now you know. There's a lot that we need to move forward and learn from the brain. And that is why today I want to look at the world of investments, the world that you are in, through the lens of the human brain. So the first question I would possibly ask when I'm really looking at it would be things are questions which normally could be taken, but definitely I'll raise those questions. And I'll finally give some answers also. But as I said, it will question some of the existing ways of doing it. But possibly I have a right to do it. Because 33 years back, I began my career by selling mutual funds in 16 Indian Exchange Place in Calcutta, sitting across the counters and giving the people, so I know. And I've several of your mutual funds that you're dealing with, I've launched it. So I know that world fairly well. But obviously, now I have a very different point of view, and that's what I will share with. So the first question that I want to ask is, okay, I know, the moment we speak about investment, it's all about future. It's all about your child's education, it's all about getting your child married, it's all about savings for the future, it's all about the future. There's no doubt about it. Give up, don't spend too much today, but spend for the future. Save for the future. But I have a simple question for you. Is our brain geared up to think of the future? Is our human brain geared to think of the future? Well, let me rephrase the question. When did human brain started thinking of tomorrow? Tomorrow. Future. When did they start thinking? The human brain started thinking of tomorrow when we started agriculture. And when did we start agriculture? That's about 8,000 years back. And human brain has been something, it's a machine that has been sort of being developed over the last 600 million years. And for the last 600 million years, it has been evolving in a certain way, where our forefathers saw something, threw the stone, killed it because they were feeling hungry. They ate what they could eat. Did they store and said, oh, let's keep some food because in case tomorrow there might not be animals around, so let's keep something? Did they ever? That is just about 6,000, 8,000 years back, whereas we started thinking of tomorrow. Or another industry, another whole policy area, wherein we are talking about humans' ability to think of the future is sustainability. Just 2 weeks back, I was at TIS on a sustainability conference, and I asked the same question. You're talking about not just my future, it's not my child's future, my daughter's future. It's 3-4 generations ahead. How many of us have even thought, even for 1 second, of your granddaughter's daughter or child? But the whole sustainability is all about building a world that we can, building for the future. I think anyone who's in financial services should read this book by George Marshall. This is all about sustainability, but you can just know what the construct of the human brain, what are the biases, what are the biological problems the brain has when it comes to thinking of tomorrow. And he's categorically said, and even Daniel Kahneman is quoted, someone I know well, because Richard Thaler used to invite me to Chicago booth several times before we won the Nobel Prize. Because many a time he used to say, Biju, a lot of things I'm putting on theory, but where is the practice or what do you do? So I used to go to Chicago booth several times. And I used to discuss a lot with him on some of these constructs wherein even behavioral economics have to take so much from neuroscience. Or let me take another area. It's a world that you're familiar with. LIC. We've been saying for decades, LIC had been saying, hey, you might die. And if you die, your family won't have anything. So please, take a term policy. They've been telling them about term policy. But what percentage of the premium of LIC comes from term policies? A belief that I will die. And so after I die, my family has to live after me. 3%. Is it not telling you something about the human brain? Is it not telling us something about the human brain? Just yesterday, an insurance company person called me up and said, Biju, I want to discuss. My distributors are not selling term policies. Can you help? And I told him it's a biological problem. It's a biological problem. He said, death. I said, yeah, death. I said, any of us have experience of our death? Even in our dreams? Even in our dreams as we're falling from the top of the mountain, the top, as we're about to hit the floor, we'll wake up. So death is something which I have no experience of. The same is what finally one of the big problems that we solved among a lot of other human behavior problems is people crossing the railway tracks in Mumbai and getting hit by the train. And until then, we were showing dead bodies and this, that, and all that. But one of the things I told railways, don't show a dead body, like the cigarette advertising, but that's not relatable. Because my death is not something that I can relate to. So our industry has been saying, but somewhere we ignore data. And it's not just India. Look at across the world, look at life insurance companies and look at their term policies. All of them have less than 10% of their total premium comes from term policies because our human brain is not created to think of future. Enough studies have shown that when I think of my future self, which I know we're trying to do it by changing the face, talking about my daughter's education, daughter's marriage, The parts of the brain that gets activated are parts of the brain that get activated when I think of a stranger, which means between my present self and my future self, there's absolutely no connection. I think that is why I think we have to acknowledge the first. I think as investment managers, people who work in the world of investment, we have to acknowledge the fact that for the last 600 million years, this instrument, this machine that is there between our ears, which takes all the decisions of ours, has been living for that day. Behavioral economics have been saying discounting of the future, discount, and even they have said risk, forget about future. Can our brain think of risk in the future? Absolutely no. It just ignores it. But somewhere we've been driven by the rational man. And we still don't want to give up that belief that man is so rational. If I give him, all the information and all the things, of course, he's an intelligent man, he should take the right decision. But let me begin with the first significant learning that I want to place in front of you, that the human brain is created to live in the present. Where it's all about investment, we're trying to get people to save for tomorrow, for the future. It is a very difficult task. But it's not difficult, because it's understanding the problem itself is good for you. Because when railway general manager, they came to me and said, Biju, can you study as to why people are getting hit by the train? It took us 6 months to study it. I spent hundreds of hours on the railway tracks of Mumbai, but finally to know why people are getting hit by a train they can see coming in. Again, I said it's a biological problem, because our brain is good. Our forefathers' brains were very good in judging the speed of small things like rabbits and deers, and they could see the speed of it and kill and have their breakfast. But evolutionarily, we haven't seen large objects move fast. Elephants, giraffes all moved very slowly. And so when I see and large objects started moving fast, the last 200 years or so, 200 years is too short a time in the 600 million year evolutionary history to make any impact. And studies very clearly said, when I'm looking at that train, I'm underestimating the closing distance of that train by 40%. And once we got that insight, okay, we could move obviously into a solution. So the first thing I want to talk about is the insight that I want to give you is the human brain is not, the evolutionary winds are not with you, the investment advisors. Because somewhere you might be talking about the future, but the brain or the person listening to you is actually living and wanting to live in the present. I know next you would say, let's give information. And I know that question was asked, I think you were asking the question to all the people. Let's give information. And by giving information, will things work? Now, talking about information, dashboards of the greatest quality, showing all about it, I have to take you to what happened on 22nd of May, 2010. Captain Gluziga had flown from Mangalore to Dubai, and he was taking a return flight, and he was the chief pilot, and flight first officer was Ahluwalia. And on the return flight from Dubai, as the flight was about to land in Mangalore, as soon as he got up, after some time, Captain Gluziga goes off to sleep, which he's allowed to sleep. And just about 15 minutes before the flight was to land in Mangalore, he got up. Why did he get up? Because Mangalore is a tabletop airport. And DGCR rule says if it is a tabletop airport, it's the chief pilot has to take control over. So Captain Gluziga takes control over. And as he's about to land, just about a minute or so before, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, there's a feedback saying that sing rate, pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up. I have the whole recording saying, and there is 3 times more. First officer Ahluwalia is saying, sir, we are far too high. Let's do a go round. Sir, no runway left. Let's do a go round, sir. The most sophisticated information processing or delivery mechanism that you can ever find The cockpit of one of the most advanced aircrafts was giving him clearly warning, they are far too high. There is a human who was sitting beside him and saying, no, 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 let's do a go around. Captain Glusica had 7 warnings. 7 warnings not to land his plane. Captain Glusica landed that plane that day. And in that process, killing himself and 158 other passengers. Why did Captain Glusica land his plane? Now, he is one of the most experienced pilots in Air India, with more than 10,000 hours of flying time. He had information being provided at the most appropriate time, not just once, 7 times. So was it lack of information that prevented that man from taking the right decision? Today, my team works across a whole lot of activity trackers and others. And one of the things I've realized, I can tell you, I think we have worked across, you mention a human behavior problem, whether it's rape, whether it's road accidents, whether it's trespassing of rail, you mention it and we worked on it. But there's one thing common in all of them. We know it. Problem is not awareness. There are very, very high levels of awareness. Awareness has even translated into intent. But due to some reason, this awareness is not translating into action. This intent is not translating into action. This gap is the problem. Now, this gap, are you trying to fill it up with more and more information? More and more, messages and WhatsApp messages and more brochures being given to your person? I think we need to relook at. And that's the second point that I want to mention. The third, Biju, let's talk about returns. Because obviously, people are in the business of returns. And by doing that, obviously, I can tell them that, because right now the inflation is this, but 20 years later, when your daughter grows up and goes to college, thanks to inflation, what is now a 10 lakh fee will go up to 1.5 crores. So tell them, design, paint all those particular pictures and say, unless you get a return of so much around there, you are not going. So please start your return. So there's I'm sure our approach to getting people to invest is by showing the future where things are. But does that work? Does people really bothered about returns? Are people really bothered about returns? Or are you only, I'm saying you, the financial community believes that is the way and that is the only way to sell mutual funds or investment products. Now, one of the big projects this one was the PMJDY, the Prime Minister Jan Dhan Yojana program. Once the government had got 20 million people to open a bank account, the finance ministry came to us and said, can you study these particular people? And as part of that, because they were all clearly at the bottom of the pyramid, these are all people who are taking loans at a very high, very, very high interest rate. And interest rates from our public sector banks are so less. So why don't we study and can you get these people to now take loans from public sector banks? So we have a very different research methodology. So using the research methodology, we went and did the research across several rural parts of this country, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Assam, a whole lot of places around. So we studied how does these people take loans from, what are the decision-making mode? And that's what we do. We always try to study the decision-making mode to know what is really are the factors that are there while the decisions being made. So we looked at it and we realized, yes, this man who's rushing in, suddenly his kid is all having shiver, and his wife said, no, we have to take him to the doctor. So he said, paisa nahi hai. He said, no, let's go to him. So he'll give money. But the point is, he knows that even at 12 o'clock in the night, he can go to the money lender in the village and I have access to him. But he knows the bank, even if I go while the bank is open, I don't think, and they said, sir, we are so scared. The man with the mush and the gun standing there, we have never entered. You're telling us we can go inside that place. So we have created our own environment, which is so alien to that particular poor man. But the whole feeling is, he doesn't feel that is accessible, whereas that money lender is accessible to him. The second point, he said, is if I know I've not paid the previous loan from the money lender, but I touch his feet, plead, he will give me money. I know. Okay, he's from my village now. He's a human. But to the bank, if I go, even if I give all the documents, is there a surety that I'll get the loan? There's no surety. And the other point they said is, on what basis? So the money lender wakes up, he rubs his ears, and finally said, oh, 5,000. Okay, 10% interest, so here is 4,500. And so, okay, that's a transaction. And then he said, 100 rupees for the next 50 days. And that's the whole, ability to pay. I mean, he said, harvest season is coming in next 50 days, so every day I can pay 100 rupees back. And he collected the money and left. And then we presented to the finance ministry and told them, now these are the factors that the person has taken into consideration while taking the loan from the money lender. And what is so peculiar about this? The word interest, how much is the interest, doesn't figure there. It's not there. So sitting in our AC comfort, we create a certain understanding of the decision-making process of the people, because our mathematics and our model says 12%, that is 82%, oh, this is so high. But look at this man. In his consideration whether I should take this one there, interest is not a factor. For him, other factors are more important. Access, surety, ability to repay, that's it. I'll continue to take the loans. It's just a reminder for us that this whole returns, interest, calculations, those are all mathematical literacy. It's been shown is not even 1% of the population has it. Even if 0.1% can actually calculate what is 13.5 of 126. Even with a calculator, how many people can calculate that? But we don't take that reality of the mathematical illiteracy of people. Of course. Is 18 higher than 16? Of course. So you want 16 or you want 18? Of course. What I need more is higher. Now what was 18 or whatever has come down to now to 14? Is that bad? Oh, it's bad. Because going down, loss aversion, Daniel Kahneman has won a Nobel Prize for it. So we created a language around returns around there. Well, let me take one other factor. Where do Indians invest most in? They invest in gold. My wife also invests a fair bit in gold. Maybe she wants to wear that piece. No, my daughter, when she gets married, for her, so that's what she's actually buying the gold for. Now, I'm sure your investors also are investing a lot in gold. But how many of them have worked out the IRR of the gold investment? What is the IRR of the gold investment of your investors? Have they even calculated it? Do they even have the ability to calculate? But they continue to invest. Again, the point I was bringing in is returns a parameter on which investments happen? The largest investment that goes on in this country is gold. And obviously, then you take savings bank and others, which will be the next 4%. But that's where here is obviously mutual funds are able to give much, much more. So take the largest chunk of investment in this country, and do you give any feeling from that people are actually looking at returns as the key parameter for their investment? And what is the key parameter of investment? It's an emotion called trust. It's an emotion called trust. Yes, in this world of rationality and numbers, I'm bringing in the role of emotions. Why? Because, as I said, neuroscience tells me about one of the most quoted examples on the medical history. Phoenix Gage was working on the railway tracks of the United States in the late 19th century. Due to an accident, an iron rod went through his left eye and came out from the top of his head. He didn't die. But his skull is even now kept in Harvard Medical Museum. And Antonio Damasio, a neuroscientist, actually took that skull, recreated to know which all parts of the brain got damaged when that iron rod went through. And he looked at all those people who also similarly, because of tumor and other things, have lost that part of the brain, this ventral medial prefrontal cortex. And then all of them, he found one problem. They all could analyze things, take decisions, look at things, look at which is the right one, which is the better decision. All that could do. But finally, when he came to taking a decision, he couldn't take it. And based on it, he wrote a book called Descartes' Error, and which basically said, the belief that we had, rationality and emotions are two separate things, and they should never be mixed, because emotions will completely, make your decisions very wrong, completely wrong. That thought process is now being completely demolished. Antonio Damasio and now neuroscientists will tell you that emotions are involved in all human decisions. So decisions involving even, you might say, 1 crore of investment that is going to go, it is an emotional decision. And my team did work among one of the largest investment banks on Wall Street. And there, the MD, who I know, asked me to only study the emotional decisions of the traders in Wall Street. So you have all your supercomputers sitting across there. Finally, he has to take a call, and he was asking me to study the emotional decisions, or how do you understand the decision making, how do you make it efficient. So they had all the rational things in front of them. All we were looking at was the non-conscious and the emotional facets of that decision making. So I just wanted to, 3 things I was basically saying. As investor in advisors, I just want to remind you, investment is all about the future, but there is a biological problem. For 600 million years, this machine that is between our ears, which takes decisions, lives for today. Now you need to be much smarter to find a way to go around it and get that machine to start thinking of tomorrow. Second, information was all right in the time of the rational man. I think Kahneman and Professor Taylor and a whole lot of people have clearly said that human brain does not have the ability nor the time to process so much of those information. And it will take shortcuts called heuristics. And understanding those heuristics are what is really important to make them take the decisions around. So providing more and more information, not just in Captain Gluziga. My team just finished about a few months back, immediately after COVID, a multi-country study right from United States to India to Pakistan to African countries as to why COVID vaccine, people didn't take it, vaccine hesitancy. Again, it was the same thing, a life and death situation, a decision, and people didn't know. The policymakers just didn't know how to get people to actually go and take a COVID vaccine. So we were asked to study that particular problem. So I'm seeing it, more and more information, more and more awareness creation, it's all good. But that does not lead into action because there is a huge gap. Now filling that gap is very, very important if the behavior, which is the investment, has to happen. And third, the world of the rational man is over. That just doesn't exist. Emotions. Understanding emotions is what is most important for you to actually develop that, to make sure that you really are going ahead with influencing a human decision. So obviously you will ask, Biju, okay, can you do something about it? Do you have any tips or what you can do? So my first advice is, I think that's the old game. Trying to talk about expenditures and what your child's marriage expenditure would be 20 years later and talk about it and inflation, this, that. It sounds very right, sounds so this about it, but humans being influenced by this one, it's just not there. And you have to give it up. You have to give it up because that's just not the way to go about it. And just recently, I think, and one of the other things is that we have to find, because if the biological truth is that the brain lives for today, then I think we have to live for today. And as I'm speaking right now, there is a Middle East country that has asked us, and it's a country where the head of the country is very, very keen that he makes that country very, healthy. So one of the things he's asked us is, can you make the citizens of my country take more steps? And my team is working on it. And again, one of the things what we said is, all the behavior change models and all of them talk about a future, 7,000 steps, 20 crore of investment. The 7,000 steps, you're speaking to a man who's not even taking 500 steps today. And he looks at that and says, when will I reach there? Do you think he'll ever start that journey? You're scaring him with all those big goals which you just can't even imagine. You're scaring him. So get him to live in the present. So what did we do? I think what we need is, and I think someone said 5% or 8%, I don't know what the actual percentage, but I know people who save are very small. But I think what we need to create is a savings behavior in this country. But how do you begin a savings behavior? You begin a savings behavior by what you can actually save today. Is that 500 rupees is what you can save? Is that you've been sort of keeping it in your this and there? Begin there. Begin there. And that's exactly what we've done in this particular country. So we just ask people, because activity trackers, we're a very rich country, so they all have activity trackers. Someone who's got 200 steps, 200 steps. Someone who's got 500 steps, 500 steps. Someone who's got 80 steps, 80 steps. We just begin where they are in the present. But we did one more thing, which I learned from you, which is at an appropriate time interval. In our case, it was daily because it is steps 1% more. Those of you who've been taking 500 steps till yesterday, can you take 505 steps today? That's all we asked. And what we are doing is compounding of the present behavior. That means the goal that we are creating is a very achievable goal. And when it is achievable, I'll do it. Of course, add a compounding to it, at a way in which you manage to do that. I think that is where incremental, good old story that we all learned, hare and tortoise. Hare means for those who are doing 500 steps, I had to move to 7,000 steps, they had to run like a hare. But good old story said, tortoises win. One step, bit more, bit more, bit more, bit more. And then it gets a behavior. Right now, savings is not a behavior. It's not a habit nowhere among a large number of people. If you were to create that as a habit, as a behavior habit, then you're making a fundamental shift. The second point is, and the question that I would ask each of you is, how much trust your investors have in you? How much do they trust you? Now, I think that's a very important question. Or, I don't know how many of you just looked at your smile in the mirror, and have you ever asked yourself, is this smile a genuine smile? Does my investors actually believe this is a genuine smile? Oh, you'll say, Biju, what is so great about a smile? I can smile. Every time the photographer says, geez, I've always done that. But no, there's a huge neuroscience about it. There is a muscle called orbicularis muscle, which is here, which you can, yes, consciously do anything about it. Say, cheese, cheese, cheese. You'll make this work. But for you to really smile, there is a muscle which is under your eye and along from here called zygomatic muscle. And that's a muscle that you just cannot activate it at a conscious level. You just cannot. And that is why when you see some people, you say, a fake, he's a fake man. He might say a lot of things and all, but he just doesn't, he looks a fake. I don't like him. And I think, remember, there is so much of our facial muscles and others, and I've not got into the neuroscience of the conscious and the neuroscience, but just to give you another science to it, we have about 11 million bits of processing is what our brain has. Of the 11 million bits of processing our brain has, only 77 of them, just 77 of the 11 million works at a conscious level. human behavior. Where is the position of your leg? Where's the position of your tongue? None of it has been thought through consciously. It is the large non-conscious of yours which is determining everything that you do and everything your investors do. Now, when I have another opportunity, I'll come and talk about the power of the non-conscious. But here I'm just telling you, because my non-consciously I can figure out, I don't even know where is the orbicularis muscle until I told you. But I know yours is a fake, but your smile is you're a genuine guy. And that's a part of our brain. I think, remember, our investors are watching us very closely. I think that's why at Fractal, we build in our people honesty to our clients. It's very clear at Fractal. Even if Fractal were to make a loss, our client should not make a loss. It's always client first. Are you, with hand on your chest, can say, even if I make a loss, I won't allow my client to make a loss. If you have that belief in you, the investors can see it in your eyes, can see it in your muscles, in your face. That honesty is what is really required to build that trust they have in you. We try to be smart with it, but as I said, we have to respect the power of the brain of our investors. They will spot you. And the third thing is, you are an advisor. You're not an agent who comes and takes some money, or cut off it, and then makes it, and then cut off it. That's agents do. You're an advisor. Advisors are like doctors. I don't know. I respect you for the knowledge you have. And the question I will have for each of you is, what is the knowledge that you are acquiring? But I know the very fact that you are sitting here, spending a whole day listening to some of the veterans who spoke in the morning and right through, shows that you are on the right track. Perfectly. Congratulations. But keep at it. You have to be reading at least 2 or 3 newspapers every day. The question I would ask is, if your investor is a doctor, what do you know about the medical world? If your investor is actually a sports person, what do you know about what's happening in the world of sports? If your investor is, I don't know, a lawyer or what do you know about that world? What can you have a chit-chat with him? And that's the way you build the relationship, which means you need to build that knowledge on a daily basis. And once you do that, you actually really become what I call an advisor. So as I end here, I just want to remind you, we thought we'll rationalize and try to bring in rationality into it. But I just want to end my session by saying it is that irrational looking, but is not irrational, those constructs of the human brain that we need to understand. And I think understanding those, what I call fundamental biological constructs of the human brain, including the power of emotions, and bringing that all into our strategies. Yes, it would involve throwing away a whole lot of things that we've done so far, but having the courage to burn the past and embrace this new knowledge is what is going to make you and you and you a winner. Wish you all a wonderful journey in creating the habit of savings in this wonderful country, India. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
sure. Please.
So there's so many questions, but I'm just going to ask one. I think one of the big issues that we face, which you sort of touched upon, is that people don't relate to death, right? And one of the big issues that we face is getting clients to sign, to do their estate planning, to make a will, to do their disability planning, and people just don't, relate to it. Is there somehow you can relate that to the present? Is there something that has been studied?
Again, I go back
the
to
nudge unit.
The poster we created for the railways. There, I think we didn't show a man who's dead, but we showed the train is about to hit you. Some of you in Chennai, in Mumbai would have seen that. And obviously we got an actor to do that. He was lying there. But I think what we did was, that was a very relatable this one for even a lot of us who would have been trespassing the railway track. So get the problem not to death, that will never work. Never work. It's not possible. You have to relate it to something that is immediately that it happened. And I think as an investor, if you know that, assume he had a hospitalization, if you had, I think that is where, and studies have shown, whenever, for example, tsunamis or, such, this one happened, the insurance, this one actually goes up. That means such events, and then you have to play along with it. And I think that's what I would actually look at. And so as a close associate of the investor, we would definitely know what's happening in that life. And we should, because you're not just one. I think then you can relate and say, yeah, so why don't we? And he also knows, maybe this time I was a bit close. So next time, so I think he's now telling me to make the will. So let me make the will. So I think we'll have to relate it to an immediate, this one, and that's the only way it will work. Rationally trying to bring it about will never work.
Much deserved indeed.
Any other questions? No.
Sir?
Do you want to take up another question?
Yeah. Can I ask one?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I have a question. So you mentioned about the emotional aspect while decision making for most people. But we've also come across many studies and many reports where we broadly categorize people into two types. One who think logically, rationally, and the ones who are very emotion-based, who take decisions based on emotions. So for someone who takes decisions based on logic, information, data, how much of this approach will help, to goad them into an action? Not necessarily as to goading them into action, but to kind of appear to make sense to them. Because some people are just driven by cold logic, data, numbers, facts, figures, not so much the emotion aspect. So
I can only first give an example. Fractal, as is not started by me. I started another company called FinalMile. I merged that with Fractal about 5 years back. And Fractal, pioneered data analytics. And Srikanth, who heads it, had artificial intelligence and engineering at the core. But he always believed, and he always knew, it can only be complete if I bring in design and behavioral science into it. Because I think that means the pioneer of data analytics in this country is clearly telling you that data is very good, AI is very good, which is based on it, but human behavior, because mostly what happens, the data provides you a good and very good this on what are people doing. But why did they do what they did? As I said, it's so much in the non-conscious that you will never really figure that out. That people are getting hit by a train because our brain cannot judge the speed of large object. Wouldn't have helped, because I have all the data, when are people dying, what age, everything was there, across from here to Kalyan. But that insight would have only come from neuroscience. So my advice is, it's a wrong belief. It's a wrong belief. That's why the Descartes era. René Descartes, who wrote the Western philosophy, who said emotions and rational things should never be combined, is wrong. We need to combine both. We need to combine both. And if evolutionarily, if emotions were bad, emotions would have become less and less important in our life. But look at it. The emotion of fear, for example, has saved far more human lives than all of modern medicine put together. And repeating, the emotion of fear has saved far more human lives than all of modern medicine put together. So if you look at the work that we've done on road safety, we reduced road accidents in India by 69%. We reduced trespassing deaths in Mumbai by 75%. We used Thank you. But we use the power of the emotion of fear. So emotions are very, very powerful, stimuli for creating action. That gap that we set, information, yes, logically, so much you'll achieve. But that information translating into behavior, bridging it, it's a deeply emotional game. And that's a game you'll have to play. So play both together, and that makes you a winner.
Fantastic. Great answer there. Maybe we have time for just one more question. Yes.
Biju, hi. This is Varun here from Bangalore. Firstly, thank you for one of the most fascinating sessions in an advisor conference. I had two questions for you. First was, do you have any practical suggestions on how do we build this capability and capacity within our team of advisors? Are there some processes, are there some approaches which will help us build this? Because then they can practically add it on to clients. And are there any, are there those one or two top books or resources you recommend for us to build our understanding of this space?
Yeah. First, I think, as I said, Fractal is a good example of it, where now every Fractal team has now AI experts, engineering experts, and human behavior and design experts. So all our teams are a combination of it. And I know it's only for the people who've been speaking rational and all those head and shoulders and others and all that. Suddenly you talk about emotions. But somewhere I'm sure, and I teach in a lot of the IIMs and all that, there are a lot of kids who are intuitively brilliant. And take them into your teams. Let both your data experts or AI experts and these people work together. So start creating multidisciplinary teams is what I would actually say. To break an existing paradigm, we have to first break the existing paradigm of our construct of our teams, which is too rational. That's what I would do. Now, book, I can always speak about it, but let me tell you what, the book that changed my life about 27 years back, a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. Now, it's so beautifully written, and you will actually find that it's just practical examples after practical examples taken from the beggars and terrorist organizations and others, and see if you can use some of them, and definitely you can use some of them. Begin there. And then later, if you need a more deeper books, just let me know, and I would actually definitely share that with you. My number is always with you. And for talk, I should thank the organizers, Renu, Ajit, they're all here. I mean, he only recommended my name, I know, to her. But I think the organizers invited me. I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to speak to such an august and such a wonderful audience that you were. I could just feel it when I was talking to you.
Wonderful.
Sorry, there was one more.
Yeah, hi, this is Santosh here. I have one question. So I think we saw what a talk you kind of gave focus a lot on people possibly who are not investors today because we all try to pitch in inflation, the future cost of the things, start earning, you're too late, things like that. Now that possibly is a pitch we give it to people who are non-investors. But when we see investors who are already in the market, are possibly spending enough time with us, have seen some cycles in the marketplace, tend to basically focus a lot more on returns than actually on risk. If you look at the entire millennial behavior in trading today in the markets today, the derivatives trading that we're seeing in the marketplace, maybe it is more speculative than returns. So what explains when the moment I switch over to being an investor from non-investor, my behavior completely changes from not bothered about calculating returns, but to only calculate returns?
I think I would put the blame of returns, and Ajit and I know we have coffee discussions, and I always blame the industry. Because the language you're speaking is returns and returns and returns. If you speak what you expect the investor not to speak that language. So we need to change the language. And I told you, you say 18%, and suddenly you didn't get 18%. Of course, people will say, why you did not get 18%? Or you said, well, so far I think I had a return of 18, now it's gone down to 14. Obviously, will you feel fat? Okay. When something goes low, people feel bad. Definitely it is. But I think you were in the discussion, so I know in the morning you said, I think someone said that this is a long-term game, ups and downs and others and all will happen around there. But why you like a small child, when I come from a farmer's background, every time, you plant, lift it and look at it, lift it and look at it. Can you do that? That's what you guys are actually doing. 16% now, it's gone to 14%. Is it so? Look. Now, I think we need to change that game. And I know it's a complex change that is required, but I think that's where, as I said, people who understand human behavior have to become a part of your teams. They can come and tell you how that shifting from the return game, you can actually move to an emotional game. the way the gold has managed to do it, the way the savings banks have managed to do it. So your own world of investment shows you that the world is willing to do without talking about the returns. So it's a matter of mindset. And are you willing to change that? And that's a big question.
Last, what are those conversations that will help change that mindset? I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes it's just the portfolio. We also speak about returns. Clients also expect that. But what is that shift? What is that thing that can bring about this?
The focus should be, have you saved what you can? If I could save 500 rupees today, I've done it. I've done a good job. Returns, as you said, the market up and down is not in my control, and all of us know that. There's no way, even with your best supercomputers, you can predict what the returns will be 1 year later. Have you saved today? Have you saved tomorrow? I think we should focus on the behavior of savings and make people happy that every day I've saved. Like that's what I'm doing in this country. Every day we are making sure that people are actually taking steps. When they're not taking steps, we have emotional blackmailing a little way to make sure that you're not taking 500 steps today. What happened? And we have ways of doing it. So just create that savings behavior and let the focus be here on the input, not so much on the output and what could be. And the whole problem is shift that. And as long as more and more people are saving and more people are saving on an increasing base, 1% per week or per month, that's good enough. I think we are on the right track.
The very last question, yes.
You said multiple times to have people in the team who understand behavior, but there are many RIAs who are individuals. So I am an individual. So I can't have somebody else in my team, at least for some time. So, and I am maybe more on the rational part. So a person like that, how would they include these topics?
I would see I would just request you to pick up Robert Cialdini. It's changed my life. And when you look at it, you suddenly realize there are, the beggars and others in the street and others are all using very, very powerful influencing tools, which look so simple. They give a flower and they start a conversation. And that's all. Nothing complex, no supercomputers around there. So that's a good book that tells you there are a lot, even simple things like if I write on a sheet of paper that I will invest 500 rupees every month on a sheet of paper, just using pen, my commitment to saving 500 rupees dramatically goes up than me just saying I'll invest 500 rupees. So there are a lot of small things, but extremely powerful things that have been used by the army, a whole lot of other people, which are all about human behavior influence. So read Influence by Robert Cialdini, so individuals like you will have some tips, because I know there's a lot of intuitive wisdom in you. Because, it will just prop up and say, oh, I always thought I should do this. You're saying this is all I need to do it. And that's exactly what will happen when you read that book. You will get it. You will get it.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, I'll ask. Yeah.
Okay.
Please, go ahead.
So I have read the book Influenced by Robert Cialdini. When I read the book, I have read the book Influenced by Robert Cialdini. The book was highly impactful. The only thing which I was myself worried about is, will I become manipulative after reading the book? I've read several books on psychology, and this is one of the first books that I've read. So this was one, heart of heart, I really felt I'll probably become manipulative to the point that I can actually wind the clients around my little finger. So, I really felt that. So, I just want to know, is there anything...
What are you manipulating for? Are you manipulating to make more money for myself? Or am I manipulating you to make sure that you actually become more successful in life? And then the same thing people ask me when a lot of the solutions we've done for trespassing and others are working at a non-conscious level. You'll see some yellow lines painted on in Vadala or in Thane and all that. So people don't know what it is for. So people said you're influencing people at a non-conscious level. I said I'm saving their lives at a non-conscious level. Is that wrong? So it depends on what our ultimate karma, the end status. Is it to benefit myself, or is it to benefit him? If we're doing something fully knowing that he's got a deficiency, he's not able to think of the future, and we are using this to get over his biological problem, as much as he couldn't judge the speed of large object, which is a biological problem. So me not be able to think of the future is also a biological problem. So if I use one of these to get him over that problem, you're like a doctor who's solving, taking care of his problem, and that's exactly what you do. I assume that should do the trick.
Sir, sorry for pushing one more question. So, sir, basically, I wanted to understand, do you found any analogy in between the education of a person and the involvement of emotions in the decision-making of that person? For example, if we are approaching a client who is very well-educated, that person's decision-making would be more facts-driven rather than emotions as compared to a client who is comparatively less educated. Is there any analogy?
There's no difference. I think you'll find emotions are fairly consistent across human beings because it's very, very basic, very, very non-conscious. Our educations and other things, first of all, emotion itself happens at a non-conscious level. Consciously, we can't even smile. That means when you smile, that's why photographers have to actually to say cheese, because the orbicularis muscle you cannot consciously activate. So emotions are not something that you can activate consciously. So people, consciously you can say a lot of things, but the deep emotions always comes from non-conscious, and that is consistent across people irrespective of their age. Age slight, there is a different 25 above, that's when the prefrontal cortex is fully developed, but after that is fairly consistent. That's what we have seen.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, I can clearly see how you've taken over the entire room. A huge, huge round of applause for Biju.